Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to welcome everybody here to this, the ceremony conferring honorary fellowships on distinguished people who have been given this award. This will be the group for 2015. Now permit me to introduce those at the dais. First, on my right, is the rector of the Hebrew University, Professor Asher Cohen. And next to him is the chairman of the International Board of Governors, Mr. Michael Mickey Federman. Next to him is our university president, Professor Menachem Ben Sasson. And next to him is the vice president for advancement and external relations, Professor Ronnie Friedman. And my name is Eliyahu Honig. As I said, this is one of the most important ceremonies in the university calendar. And I'm very, very honored to be able to invite the president of the university, Professor Menachem Ben Sasson, to address us.
Why is it so important in the calendar of the Hebrew University? So why is it important? What's the importance of this very ceremony that we are now about to begin? Number one, as I said, it comes from the families and from the communities. You may say every ceremony comes from families and communities. This one is the ceremony that we honor those who carry on their shoulders the day-to-day responsibility for the university activities here and abroad. It's a role model. Whenever you talk about lay leadership, this type of a lay leadership is the skeleton that on it one can build an organization. And look, every year we have a distinguished group representing the Jewish world and the communities of the Hebrew University, echoing the activities and reflecting to these activities in a way that gives power for the future to continue with all of those. I would like to share with you a concern about this skeleton, about this kind of a leadership, about the responsibility of ourselves to kind of a future. Let's start not with the responsibility to the Hebrew University. It will come soon. Let's focus on the continuity in your own communities. How many years do we expect to have leadership who still remember the Holocaust, the building of the State of Israel, and taking from these resources the power and the responsibility to maintain the contacts with the State of Israel? Not necessarily from Jewish point of view. If you ask Einstein, his attitude to the university was he created his Jewish identity through the university. It's secular. It deals with values that he cherished and we nowadays cherish. So I do believe that in the coming generations and the current one, there are many who think scientifically. I do hope that in our communities around the world, many think in a rational way. What's to become with their identity? What kind of families do they establish? It's not a question of Jewishness. It's a question of a responsibility about the future. And among us sit those who have been maintaining the contact for more than a generation. We do not want to replace, but we have to secure, to make sure, to build a safety net, if not the real leadership. How do we make it? This morning, we had a benefactor meal, breakfast, given by chairman of the board, Mickey Federman. And not only one said, I am Mr. So-and-so, Mrs. So-and-so, and we are next generation, third generation it could be. We have already now living 4 generations of responsibility to the university. In order to keep family, you want to have a bond, to bring them together, to have some festives, to celebrate birthdays, from time to time memorial events. You know how to create it. As Eliyahu said, it's in the calendar. You know how to make it around the year. You never stop. There is this activity for the university. There is another function for the university. There is a board meeting for the university there, chasing somebody to help the university, trying to convince another one to come and then to visit the university. For you, the university is not a question. You have got already the answer, and you are the answer. What I came to propose tonight, in this event, in this occasion, we are among the family. We are in the community of the Hebrew University worldwide. We have started thinking about the future. I'm not the future. I'm the current. There are kids, 40 years old, 45 years old, some are 30 years old. They studied. Many of them visited with us, spent a year, a semester here. They know how much this university is important to you, here, to you, down here. In order to have this chain of identity with values that you cherish and you are proud of. You are going to hear a professor of history. You'll hear when he's introduced that to his course, open to the public, enrolled some 150,000 students, which is not bad. History. You heard about this invention. You heard about another patent. You visited and you know whenever you eat cherry tomato you are proud of. It is not enough. It is not enough because if we cannot inherit it to the generation, not necessarily in the family, but around, we may fail in the near future. I'm not threatening. We build it. Not fast enough, maybe not sophisticated enough, but let's put it on the agenda. And what is more fit occasion than this ceremony? We talk about the future with those who carry the current and the past on their shoulders. So yes, I came to salute to you. We are going to do it in a second. But the importance of this ceremony is with sharing, with honor, and fellowship of ourselves. So I came to consult with you. And you got a question. From time to time, it's good to go out with a question with not necessarily clear answer. Questions bring commitments. Questions bring some visions. At least they take you to an easy situation that you have to find an answer to your beloved. I thank you very much.
Mr. President, we thank you most sincerely for those important messages. We now arrive at the first musical interlude, but I was a little delinquent at the beginning. Forgot to ask you to turn off these instruments of torture, telephones, beepers, and all such things. You may open them when we finish our proceedings. Our first musical interlude, and we have Ola Shul-Sekretar, actress, singer, and Michal Solomon on the piano. They're going to perform a song called Mechora Sheli, My Homeland. Now, why is this special? First of all, it was composed by one of the great poets in this country, a poet who was also a beloved teacher at the Hebrew University in comparative literature, So I want to invite our musicians to the stage to perform the first musical interlude.
מכורה שלי, ארץ נוי אביונה, למלכה אין בית, למלך אין כתר, רק 7 ימים אביב בשנה, וסגריר וגשמים כל היתר. אך 7 ימים הורדים פורחים, ו7 ימים הטללים זורחים, ו7 ימים חלונות פתוחים, וכל קבצנייך עומדים ברחוב, ונושאים חברונם אל האור הטוב, וכל קבצנייך שמחים. מכורה שלי, ארץ נוי אביונה, למלכה אין בית, למלך אין כתר, רק 7 ימים חגים בשנה, ועמל ורעב כל היתר. אך 7 ימים הנרות ברוכים, ו7 ימים שולחנות ערוכים, ו7 ימים הלבבות פתוחים, וכל קבצנייך עומדים בתפילה, ובנייך בנותייך חתן כלה, וכל קבצנייך אחים. לה 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 לה. עלובה שלי אביונה ומרה, למלך אין בית, למלכה אין כתר, רק אחת בעולם את שבחך אמרה, וגנותך חרפתך כל היתר. ועלה כן אלך לכל רחוב ופינה, לכל שוק וחצר וסמטה וגינה, מחורבן חומותייך כל אבן קטנה בקש, ושמור למזכרת, ומעיר לעיר, ממדינה למדינה, אנודה עם שיר ותיבת נגינה, לתנות דלותך הזוהרת. לה 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 לה. רק אחת בעולם את שבחך אמרה, וגנותך חרפתך כל היתר.
I must say, I think we would agree with a beautiful, beautiful rendition. And one could think that if Leah Goldberg is watching from above, she would be very, very pleased with what she heard. Ladies and gentlemen, we now reach the point of the awards. Now, the system is very simple. I will invite the President in a few moments to stand on the carpet of honor. And then I will invite each of the recipients, the awardees, one by one, to come forward and join the President. And then I will invite a distinguished reader of the scroll to come forward, read the scroll. And that will be done for each of the awardees. So, Mr. President, may I ask you to come forward and stand on the carpet? And I would like to invite Mr. Meir Dayan. Mr. Meir Dayan to come forward, join the President, and to invite Billy Shapira, Vice President, Director General, to read the Fellowship Scroll Summary.
מאיר דיין הוא כלכלן ואיש עסקים המעורה במשק הציבורי ובעולם העסקי בישראל. בוגר האוניברסיטה העברית בכלכלה ובמדעי המדינה ומוסמך שלה במנהל עסקים. מאיר דיין חבר פעיל מזה שנים רבות במוסדות המנהל האוניברסיטאי ומסייע לקידום וביסוס יציבותה הכלכלית של האוניברסיטה. הוא חבר בחבר הנאמנים ומכהן בו בתפקיד יושב ראש ועדת הכספים. כמו כן, הוא חבר בוועד הפועל, בוועד המנהל, בוועדת הנכסים העוסקת בנדל"ן האוניברסיטאי ובוועדת ההשקעות, ותורם להם בתבונה מניסיונו רב השנים. בשנים 1984 ועד 1995 שימש יושב ראש ארגון מסיימי האוניברסיטה העברית, ומאז הוא תומך נלהב לקידום פעילות משרד הבוגרים והשוחרים בישראל. מאיר דיין התחיל את דרכו המקצועית בשנת 1970 במשרד האוצר, והיה כלכלן באגף התקציבים. ובשנת 1972 התמנה לעוזר הכלכלי של שר האוצר דאז. הוא היה עוזרם של שני שרי אוצר אגדתיים, פנחס ספיר ויהושע רבינוביץ'. בשנת 1977 התמנה לנספח הכלכלי של ישראל בארצות הברית, ועם שובו מונה ליועץ מיוחד לפעילות עסקית בינלאומית במשרד האוצר, תפקיד אותו מילא עד 1989. בשנים 1993 ועד 2001 היה מאיר דיין מנכ"ל חברת ICC הון לישראל, ובה יזם את הקמת אינבנטק, קרן הון סיכון, שבה אף שימש יושב ראש מועצת המנהלים, יושב ראש הוועד המנהל, וכן עמד בראש צוות ההנפקה של החברה בבורסה בתל אביב בשנת 1998. במסגרת תפקידיו השונים כדירקטור בחברות השונות, היה מעורב בייזום ובהשקעות שונות, ובהן כך למשל ערוץ הקניות בו כיהן בתפקיד ראש צוות ההקמה ויושב ראש מועצת המנהלים והוועד המנהל. אישי ישיר, חברה לביטוח, גם בה היה ראש צוות ההקמה, יושב ראש הוועד המנהל ויושב ראש מועצת המנהלים. כמו כן היה ממקימי הרשות לעסקים קטנים ובינוניים, וחבר הנהלתה בשנים 94 ועד 2002. וחבר הנהלת הפורום הישראלי לקידום הקשר הישיר בין ישראלים ליהודים בתפוצות, ויושב ראש הפורום העסקי. מאיר דיין כיהן כדירקטור וחבר בוועדות שונות במערכת הבנקאות הישראלית, כך בבנק ירושלים, בבנק לאומי ובבנק בינלאומי. הוא הבעלים ומנהל של חברת מ"ד טאנר החזקות בע"מ, חברה לייעוץ עסקי ודירקטור בחברת מגדל שלום. מאיר נשוי לאהובה שהיא יועצת חינוכית, אב ל3 בנות וסב ל7 נכדים. הבת הבכורה טלי היא דוקטור לכימיה חישובית. הבת השנייה נוגה בוגרת האוניברסיטה העברית ומורה לפיזיקה, והצעירה רוני כאן מבלה עימן. נוסף על כל אלה הוא מעניק לנו מזמנו, ממרצו, כמו גם מתבונתו הרבה לפיתוח תהליכי עבודה חדשים במערכת התקצוב האוניברסיטאי. בהכרת תודה על תרומתו רבת השנים, הוא מוכתר בזאת עמית כבוד ומתקבל בברכה אל שורת עמיתיה המכובדים של האוניברסיטה העברית.
The President will be presenting also the gold pin. This is the version of the Hebrew University logo, the torch of learning, and with the amalgamation of the Aleph and Ayin being the first letters of the Hebrew University in Hebrew. The special pin will be awarded to each one of the honorary fellows today. It's now my pleasure to invite Shirley Ehrlich of Australia to come forward and join the President. And I want to invite Mr. Robert Simons, OAM, the Federal President of the Australian Friends, to read the Fellowship Scroll summary.
A tireless and devoted advocate of the Hebrew University for over 50 years, Shirley Ehrlich is a key member of Sydney's Jewish community, combining a key professional life with her two main passions, her family, as you've heard, and the Hebrew University. Shirley trained as a nurse and midwife, initially worked in these fields, going on to develop a career as a health education lecturer and medical practice manager. Alongside her professional career, she has selflessly devoted her time, energy, and efforts to the Hebrew University and its mission. She is the longest-serving member of the Committee for Student Support of the Australian Friends, serving the committee since she joined in 1963, while pregnant with a third of her 6 children. She went on to serve as president throughout these years. Shirley Ehrlich has played an instrumental role in securing much tangible support for the university's activities, in particular for scholarships for students from disadvantaged backgrounds. Likewise, she has ensured the highest profile for the university within the Jewish community of Sydney through her active involvement in organisations such as WITSO and United Israel Women's Division. While Shirley Ehrlich credits her husband and children with allowing her to follow her passion, she has provided her family with the best of role models. Indeed, her success in combining the family life with a challenging career and a leading role in the Jewish community earned her recently named as Mother of the Year in the Australian Jewish News. Beyond her advocacy of the Hebrew University in Australia, Shirley actively participates in the university's activities in Jerusalem. As Associate Governor of the University's Board of Management, she regularly attends our annual meetings here in Jerusalem, and her daughter, Rachel, both studied and celebrated her wedding at the Hebrew University. Shirley Ehrlich is hereby named an Honorary Fellow and welcomed into the ranks of the Hebrew University of Jerusalem's honoured friends.
I now have pleasure in inviting the Winnie Fenia of Sweden to join the President on the carpet. And I invite Professor Ronnie Friedman, Vice President for Advancement and External Relations of Hebrew University, to read the Fellowship Scroll summary.
An outstanding advocate of the Hebrew University, whose commitment perpetuates a tradition established by her late father, Winnie Fenia is a former president of the Swedish Friends of the Hebrew University, who today leads its South Sweden chapter. Born in Helsingborg, Winnie Fenia did her undergraduate degrees in languages and political science at the universities of Lund and Stockholm, and a master's degree in international public policy at the Johns Hopkins University in Washington, D.C. She joined Sweden's diplomatic service in 1973, and in addition to assignments at the Ministry for Foreign Affairs in Stockholm, she served at Swedish embassies throughout the world, including the United States, France, Zaire, Malaysia, the United Kingdom, Ireland, and the People's Republic of China. Prior to her retirement in 2011, she served as Sweden's Consul General in Canton, Gwangju. Winnie Fenia's involvement with the Hebrew University continues a legacy of support and friendship initiated by her late father, Martin, who was an early member of the Swedish Friends of the Hebrew University. Thanks to his and his wife's assistance, the university was able to establish the Martin and Ella Fenja Cancer Research Fellowship Fund in 1986. Ella Fenja continues her support for this fund. Her and the late husband's generosity was recognized when their names were inscribed on the Hebrew University's Wall of Founders in 1987 and on its Wall of Life in 2013. Winnie Fenja has been a board member of the Swedish Friends since 1998, serving as its president from 2001 until 2004. On moving to South Sweden in 2011, she established a South Sweden chapter to which she has enlisted a number of new friends. Winnie Fenja is a generous friend of the Hebrew University. She pays tribute to the memory of her late father, who was an optometrist, through her grant in honor of Martin Fenja for the university's Learning Center for the Blind. Recently, she established the Winnie Fenja Elsek Doctor Scholarship in memory of Ernst and Annelies Lieser. Winnie Fenja is hereby named as an honorable fellow and welcomed into the ranks of the Hebrew University of Jerusalem's honored friends.
It's now my pleasure to invite Sheldon Hechtman of the United States to join the President on the carpet of honor, and to invite Mr. Michael Kurtz, Chairman of the Board of the American Friends of the Hebrew University, to read the fellowship scroll summary.
Sheldon Hechtman, a financial advisor and first vice president of Morgan Stanley Wealth Management, is the immediate past president of American Friends of Hebrew University's Southeastern Region Board. Deeply devoted to Israel's well-being and to the Jewish community, Shelley Hechtman serves on the American Friends National Board of Directors, is a governor of the Hebrew University, and a member of the Board of Trustees of the Harry S. Truman Research Institute for the Advancement of Peace. He and his dynamic wife, Ellen Klersfeld, a member of AFHU's Southeast Region Board and National Investment Committee, have been greatly instrumental in advancing AFHU's mission. Supportive of many aspects of Hebrew University's work, Shelley Hechtman and Ellen Klersfeld have fostered progress for the people of Israel and the global community. At the Hebrew University, they have contributed to the Edmund and Lily Safra Center for Brain Sciences, the Lautenberg Center for Immunology and Cancer Research, and the Truman Institute, among other vital initiatives. In 2008, Ellen Klersfeld and Shelley Hechtman's name were included on the university's Wall of Life in recognition of their generosity. Shelley Hechtman has been similarly active and effective in the United States on behalf of AFHU's mission. Under his leadership, the Southeast Region Annual Leadership Education Forum, Aleph, attendance grew to 300, creating a popular educational event in Florida. Throughout his tenure, Shelley Hechtman devoted time and energy to building relationships in support of the university and to raising its profile locally and nationally. A resident of Delray Beach, Florida, Shelley established his career in broadcast media and direct response marketing. He subsequently developed a successful career in financial services. Both Shelley Heckman and Ellen Klersfeld are frequent visitors to Israel and the Hebrew University. In 2011, Ellen Klersfeld was honored by AFHU as a Leader of Distinction. Shelley Heckman is hereby named an Honorary Fellow and welcomed into the ranks of the Hebrew University of Jerusalem's honored friends.
Would now like to invite Dr. Benno Michel of the United States to join the President on the carpet. I now want to invite Daniel Schlesinger, the President of the American Friends of Hebrew University, to read the fellowship scroll.
Dr. Benno Michel and his wife Elaine have been involved with the Hebrew University and its American Friends Association since the 1980s, providing staunch support for medical research and higher education at the university and its Faculty of Medicine. They have generously funded the Elaine and Benno Michel, MD, Graduate Scholarship Fund in Pharmacology, advancing graduate medical education. In recognition of their generosity, the Michels' names are being inscribed on the Hebrew University's Wall of Life this year. Together, the Michels are actively engaged in fostering AFHU's mission, hosting parlor meetings and educational events that feature Hebrew University faculty in Florida and in Cleveland. Dr. Michel serves on AFHU's National Board of Regents, and he is a past president of AFHU's Cleveland region. Indeed, his dedicated efforts have helped to put the Hebrew University on the map in Frenchman's Creek, Florida, creating exciting new opportunities to showcase faculty achievements. Benno Michel has been a strong proponent of and ambassador for AFHU's annual Leadership Education Forum, Aleph, in Palm Beach. He maintains a steadfast commitment to Israel, higher education, and the Jewish community. Professionally, Dr. Michel is widely recognized in his field. He has been teaching, conducting research, and practicing clinical dermatology for over 40 years. He is clinical professor of dermatology and assistant clinical professor of pathology at Case Western Reserve University, which he joined in 1968. Dr. Benno Michel is hereby named an honorary fellow and welcomed into the ranks of the Hebrew University of Jerusalem's honored friends.
It's now my pleasure to invite Mr. Mark Polonsky of the United Kingdom to come forward to join the President, and to invite Michael G., Hebrew University Governor and former Chairman of the British Friends, to read the Fellowship Scroll summary.
Can I first say to Mark, I'm very sorry that Dad's not here today. I've known him for 30 years. He's a wonderful man of great humanity and humility. Mark Polonsky is a devoted friend of the Hebrew University, whose involvement continues a long-standing tradition of active engagement and generous support that was established by his father, Dr. Leonard Polonsky. A graduate in modern languages from Oxford University, Mark Polonsky also has a master's degree in computer science from Imperial College London, a partner in the international law firm White & Case. He's based in their London office and specializes in investment transactions in the natural resources and infrastructure sectors, particularly in Russia and other countries of the former Soviet Union. Mark Polonsky is fluent in Russian, and he and his family lived in Moscow for 10 years. Alongside his professional career, Mark Polonsky is active in philanthropy. He's a trustee of the Polonsky Foundation, established by his father, dedicated principally to promoting and supporting scholarship in the arts and humanities. He's a governor of the Oxford Centre for Hebrew and Jewish Studies and a board member of the Van Leer Jerusalem Institute, where the Polonsky Foundation supports an extensive postdoctoral program in the humanities and social sciences. As with his father, it is Mark Polonsky's broad intellectual vision that underlies his benevolent advocacy of the Hebrew University and its faculty, students, and programs. The Polonsky Foundation's support for the Hebrew University encompasses several areas, including humanities studies, the digitization of the Albert Einstein archives, student exchange programs with Chinese universities, and the Truman Institute. Mark Polonsky is a trustee of the British Friends of the Hebrew University, regularly attending and supporting its events. He is a frequent visitor to the Hebrew University and its campuses, most notably to its annual Board of Governors meeting here in Jerusalem. He has graciously taken on the mantle of speaking at the presentation ceremony of the Polonsky Prizes for creativity and originality in the humanistic disciplines, which are now in their 12th year. Mark Polonsky is hereby named an honorary fellow and welcomed into the ranks of the Hebrew University of Jerusalem's honored friends.
I now have pleasure in inviting Mr. Bernard Schuster of Canada to join the President on the royal carpet, and also to invite Murray Palais, National Chairman of the Canadian Friends of the Hebrew University, to read the Fellowship Scroll summary.
An associate governor of the Hebrew University and a key leader of the Canadian Friends of the Hebrew University, Bernard Schuster is a passionate advocate of the university who has significantly raised awareness of the university in Montreal and ensured much generous support for its advancement. Montreal-born Bernard Schuster is a pharmacist who started his business career as the owner of several pharmacies, going on to manage Miracle Mart, a major chain of discount stores, and also serving as a principal in the cosmetics distribution company. He continues to live in the Montreal area, having spent a short period living in Israel. He earned his degree in pharmacy from the University of Montreal, and in later years also completed a degree of Jewish studies at McGill University. He is a leading and respected member of the Montreal Jewish community, who is a past president of Congregation Zichron Kedoshim, takes a close interest in local Jewish education at the elementary and high school levels, and is actively involved in the Chabad in Montreal. Bernie Schuster joined the Canadian Friends of the Hebrew University over 40 years ago. As a new young member of the Friends Board in the 1970s, he was instrumental in launching the first young leadership group in Montreal. He went on to serve as Montreal chapter president and remains a committed member of the Friends Montreal and national boards, in particular in his longtime role as national vice president of the Canadian Friends. Bernard Schuster is likewise an active member of the Hebrew University's Board of Governors. Throughout his years of involvement, Bernard Schuster has extended his own generosity to the Hebrew University, where he supports scholarships and major projects, has astutely identified new sources of support, and has served as a persuasive ambassador on the university's behalf. He is an outstanding role model of philanthropy whose quiet and diligent advocacy has garnered significant support from new donors and has inspired others to become leaders of the university's Canadian Friends. Bernard Schuster is hereby named an honorary fellow and welcomed into the ranks of the Hebrew University of Jerusalem's honored friends.
I'm now happy to invite the President to reassume his seat, and I want to thank our distinguished readers of the scrolls for their performance today. It's now with great pleasure that I invite Mr. Mark Polonsky to respond on behalf of all the Honorary Fellowship recipients for 2015. Mr. Polonsky.
President, Rector, Vice Presidents, Chairman, friends, on behalf of all of us on this stage, I'd like to thank the university for recognizing us as Honorary Fellows. Honorary Fellow, Amit Kavod in Hebrew. I understand that the word Amit derives from the Akkadian word emutu, meaning family, society, or is connected to the ancient root um, meaning community. And it's a great honor for us to be welcomed into this family and this community, for those who share a love for this institution and who strive to make the dream of a Hebrew university in Jerusalem an ever more successful reality. And what an extraordinary project it is, the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. As the idea was born and developed into practice, many believed that there were other more urgent priorities. Chaim Weizmann summed it up well at the laying of the cornerstone in July 1918, when he said, "It seems at first sight paradoxical that in a land with so sparse a population, in a land where everything still remains to be done, in a land where a land crying out for such simple things as plows, roads, and harbors, we should be creating a center of spiritual and intellectual development." But, he continued, it is no paradox for those who know the soul of the Jew. It is true, he said, that great social and political problems still face us and will demand their resolution. But we Jews know that when the mind is given fullest play, when we have a center for the development of Jewish consciousness, then coincidentally we shall attain the fulfillment of all our material needs. And it was indeed crucial that this center of intellectual and spiritual development should be situated here in Jerusalem. It has been pointed out that this position on Mount Scopus is an ideally symbolic location, looking out over the wilderness of the prophets on the one hand and the modern city to the west, drawing together the profoundest Jewish past and the hopes and aspirations of the future. Before the first plot of land on Mount Scopus was acquired for the university in 1914, it had for 20 years been the summer estate of the English lawyer Sir John Gray Hill and his wife Caroline, a painter. Gray Hill had described his home in this way. On the one side, we look down upon the holy city and the great area where the temple once stood. On the other side, we see spread before us the wilderness of Judea, which descends to the Jordan Valley and the Dead Sea, and the mountains of Moab with their great gorges and purple shadows. Thus, we look upon the ground which attracts the greatest of human interest and the widest of human sympathies. And so that ground remains today. And what an achievement it is without precedent to have a Hebrew university, a university rich in the Hebrew language, the language of the Torah, the prophets, the Psalms, reborn and made contemporary so that it can accommodate the technological innovations of the startup nation, that very beautiful song we heard earlier, and the mother tongue of Nobel Prize laureates, many of whom come from this great institution. So from its founding 90 years ago, with its 3 research institutes of chemistry, microbiology, and Jewish studies, the university already demonstrated its ambitious commitment to the sciences, the humanities, and to the betterment of the human condition. And today the university holds its own among the great universities of the world, constantly overcoming new challenges, social, cultural, political, military, financial, a university for all citizens of Israel, and a major participant in the global community of research. So may we, honorary fellows, offer our congratulations on the past successes of the Hebrew University over these 90 years, and wish to the university, to all its teachers, researchers, students, and staff, continued flourishing far into the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark Polonsky, for that really brilliant response on behalf of the honorees today. We now arrive at our second musical interlude, and this is another song by Leah Goldberg, Slichot, which I've translated as forgiveness various. And I want to invite our wonderful musicians to come on the stage, be where they are at the piano, and to let us hear. Ta-da.
באת אליי את עיניי לפקוח, וגופך לי מבט וחלון וראי. באת כלילה הבא אל האוח, להראות לו בחושך את כל הדברים. באת כלילה הבא אל האוח, להראות לו בחושך את כל הדברים. ולמדתי שם לכל ריס וציפורן, ולכל שערה בבשר החשוף, וריח ילדות, ריח דבק ואורן, הוא ניחוח לילו של הגוף, של הגוף. אם היו עינויים הם הפליגו אליך, מפרשי הלבן אל האופק שלך. תנני ללכת, או תנני ללכת, לכרוע על חוף הסליחה. תנני ללכת, או תנני ללכת, לכרוע על חוף הסליחה, הסליחה. ולמדתי שם לכל ריס וציפורן, ולכל שערה בבשר החשוף, וריח ילדות, ריח דבק ואורן, הוא ניחוח לילו של הגוף, של הגוף. באת אליי את עיניי לפקוח, וגופך לי מבט וחלון וראי. באת כלילה הבא אל האוח, להראות לו בחושך את כל הדברים. באת כלילה הבא אל האוח, להראות לו בחושך
Wow, what a beautiful and moving rendition of a very beautiful song. Ola, thank you so much, and Michelle. Beautiful rendition. Our tradition is, on these occasion ceremonies, that we invite, usually, a brilliant young teacher of the Hebrew University to give the Honorary Fellowships lecture. And this I'd like to invite Professor Yuval Noah Harari, Department of History, and the subject he's chosen is, very, very thought-provoking, the new inequality. Will the 21st century be the most unequal in history? Let's wait for the answer.
Okay, so hello everybody. As you heard, I want to speak about equality and inequality in the 21st century, and in particular to address the possibility, it's not a prophecy, it's just a possibility that we need to take into account, that the 21st century will be the most unequal in human history. And first, let's start with the realization that for most of history, inequality was the norm, and it was taken for granted. It was thought to be natural that human society is divided into classes, into castes, that you have kings and paupers, that you have upper castes and lower castes, that you have noblemen and commoners. It was taken for granted that society will be based on hierarchies of race, of gender, hierarchies even within families, between parents and children, between husbands and wives. This was the situation for centuries and millennia. Then in the 19th and 20th century, in the 19th and 20th century, a new ideal came up and gained power, the ideal of equality. And you can well describe the history or the story of the 20th century in particular as the story of closing gaps between different human groups, as the story of trying to overcome and even dismantle traditional hierarchies, the story of closing the gaps between races, between social classes, between genders. Not that society in the year 2000 was completely equal, of course not, but it was far more equal than 100 years previously in 1900. However, as we look to the future of humankind, to the future of our race in the 21st century, there is a distinct possibility that history might be going in reverse, and that many of the gaps that had been narrowed in the previous 100 years will be reopened with a vengeance and will actually become larger than they ever were before in history. First of all, let's consider the possibility of reopening the gaps between different countries. If we go back to the year 1900, the world was witnessed large disparities between countries, largely as a result of the Industrial Revolution of the 19th century. During the 19th century, humankind mastered the power of steam, and then of the internal combustion engine, and radio, and telegraph, and so forth. And it used these new powers in order to produce textiles, and vehicles, and weapons, and tools far more abundantly and far more cheaply than ever before. But not all countries mastered the new powers to the same extent or at the same time. Very few countries, such as Britain, Germany, France, United States, Japan, mastered these new powers, and they gave them mastery of the world. Most countries, most people were left far behind. It took some countries like China, like India, more than 150 years to close the gaps that opened in the 19th century. And many countries still haven't closed them today, like most of the countries of Africa. As we look to the coming decades, we see humankind mastering new powers. This time the new powers are not steam or oil, but the power of biotechnology and the power of computer algorithms. And this time, the new powers will not be used to produce only textiles and tools and vehicles and weapons, This time they will be used to produce, above all else, bodies, brains, and minds. The main products of the 21st century are likely to be not tools or vehicles. Of course, we'll produce them, but that's nothing. The main products will be bodies and brains and minds. And those countries which will master the new powers will again master the world. And this time it is likely that the gaps will be much bigger and maybe will never be able to close. The gap between those who know how to produce bodies and brains and those who don't know are far larger than the gaps between those who know to produce trains or steam engines or machine guns and those who don't know. Secondly, this new power to produce bodies and brains and minds may recreate and enlarge not only gaps within the international system between different countries and areas of the world, but also within societies, within countries, between different classes, between the rich and the poor. For all of history, there were, of course, differences and gaps between the rich and the poor, but these gaps were only social, economic, and political. They were never biological. The rich generally, or the elites, or the noble people generally imagined that they are better than the common people. They generally imagined that they are more creative, they are more intelligent, they are smarter, they are more hardworking, and this is why it is right that they will be the elite, they will be on top. But as far as historians and sociologists and biologists today think, this was not true. There was no real gap between the king in the palace and the peasant in the mud hut in terms of real physical, cognitive, and emotional abilities. It was all only the imagination of the people. However, in the 21st century, we might see, for the first time in history, humankind dividing into real biological castes with actual differences in ability between the upper castes and the lower castes. Now, when people hear about such possibilities, especially people from within the sciences, from within academia, from within the medical establishment, the common reaction is to say that, yes, maybe many of the advances will begin with the upper castes in the most advanced societies, but they will gradually trickle down to everybody else, both within society and between societies, so that in the end, everybody will benefit and nobody will be left behind. And as evidence, it is common to point out what happened in the 20th century itself, that in the 20th century, many of the most important advances, especially medical advances, indeed began with the upper classes in the most advanced societies, but they spread around, they trickled down, and everybody, almost everybody, came to enjoy the benefits of antibiotics, of vaccinations, of better hygiene, better healthcare, and so forth. However, it is dangerous to assume that whatever happened in the 20th century will simply repeat itself in the 21st century. There could be, there were reasons why medicine in the 20th century was mass medicine that benefited everybody, and we cannot take it for granted that these reasons will still hold true in the 21st century. There are two reasons in particular why we should be careful in this vision, in this respect. First of all, we need to take into account that medicine is undergoing a tremendous revolution, perhaps the most important revolution in the history of medicine, not in this or that particular discovery, but in the very nature and aim of what medicine is. Up until today, the chief aim of medicine was to heal the sick. As we look to the future, we see that the chief aim of medicine might become to upgrade the healthy. And upgrading the healthy is, in principle, a very different project than healing the sick. Healing the sick is an egalitarian project. It assumes that there is a single norm of health, a universal norm of human health which is applicable to one and all. And if somebody falls below this universal norm of health, it is the job of medicine to give him or her a push and make him come back to the norm, make him or her like everybody else. Upgrading the healthy, in contrast, is an elitist project by nature. It starts from the assumption, yes, there might be some universal norm of human health, of human ability, but our aim is to surpass that norm. And this is an elitist project by nature, it has no end, and it is impossible to bring everybody, it's not the aim to bring everybody to the same level. A second reason, a second difference between what we might be facing in the 21st century and what happened previously in the 20th century is the change in the value of human beings. In the 20th century, medicine was mass medicine benefiting everybody because every human was valuable. Every human, simply by being a human being, had economic and military and therefore also political value. You needed every human you could lay your hands on to be a soldier in your army and to be a worker in your factory or in your office. And this is something the elite also knew. If you're part of the elite of France or Germany or Japan 100 years ago, you knew perfectly well that if you wanted your country and your business to be successful, you needed the masses. The armies were based on recruiting millions of people to fight, and the economy was based on recruiting millions of people to serve as workers and as clerks. And therefore the elites had an vested interest in the health of even the commonest people. Again, in Germany or France or Britain or Japan, you knew if you wanted to have many healthy and strong soldiers and workers, you needed to invest in medical services for everybody. This was the logic behind the establishment of the huge public health systems of the late 19th and early 20th century. However, in the 21st century, most humans might lose their economic and military value as computers outperform humans in more and more tasks. Computers will come to replace humans in more and more jobs. This has already been happening in the armies. The most advanced armies in the world today are no longer the mass armies that we associate with the world wars, with the First and the Second World War. To have a good and effective army today, you don't recruit millions of people and give each one of them a rifle and send them to charge forward towards the machine guns and barbed wires of the enemy. You still need humans, but far smaller numbers. You need small numbers of highly professional soldiers who know how to make use of advanced technology, and you need also relatively small numbers of highly qualified people who know how to invent and to produce this technology. This development has already been gathering pace in the military sphere, which is almost always some years or decades ahead of the civilian economy. But we are beginning to see the same thing happening also in the civilian economy. There's been recently a study by Oxford University, several professors from Oxford University, estimating that in the next 20 years, it is likely that about 50% of the jobs in the more advanced societies like the United States and European Union, about 50% of the jobs are at high risk of being taken over by computers. In Israel, there was a similar study commissioned by the government about half a year ago, just before the election, and it reached the conclusion that in Israel, about 33%, about a third of the jobs in the job market are in danger in terms of 20 years ahead. What we are talking about is not only the replacement of humans in manual labor, but also in much more sophisticated cognitive tasks. Now, it's not that computers are going to be like humans. This is science fiction. we are apparently not very close to the stage where computers will develop consciousness and will have emotions and feelings and so forth. This is very far, we are very far from that point. But computers don't need to be like humans in order to replace us. What we are witnessing is, again, a tremendous revolution, the revolution of decoupling intelligence from consciousness. Throughout history, intelligence and consciousness always went hand in hand. The only intelligent things were also conscious, and all conscious things were also intelligence. So the question, what is more important? What do we need, intelligence or consciousness? This was at most a game for philosophers, but it had no practical implications. What's happening today in the world is that we see the decoupling of intelligence from consciousness as we develop highly intelligent computer programs which are devoid of consciousness. And the big question is, what does the system really need? Does it need intelligence or consciousness? The economic system, the military system? And it's very obvious, the answer. The answer is that in most cases, in the vast majority of cases, the system needs intelligence, but it does not need consciousness. Therefore, the fact that computers are not going to be like humans, are not going to develop consciousness anytime soon, will not necessarily stop them from taking most of our jobs. This leads, and I'll finish with this thought or with this question. This raises perhaps the most important political and economic question of the coming decades, of the coming generation, is going to be, what do we need humans for, or what do we need most humans for? Back in the 19th century, the Industrial Revolution led to the creation of a new massive class of the urban proletariat. And this created enormous new problems because nobody knew how to deal with the problems, with the hopes, with the fear of this new class of the urban proletariat. And much of the political and social and military struggles of the late 19th and 20th century revolved around this question, what to do with this massive new class, the urban middle class. In the 21st century, a second industrial revolution may again lead to the appearance of a completely new massive class of humans, useless humans, and the question will be, the big political and social and economic question will be what to do with this new massive class of people. So, coming back to this question of equality and inequality, we need to take into consideration the possibility. It's not a prophecy, it's just a possibility to think about that humankind might split into at least two different castes, an upper caste of upgraded humans and a massive lower class of useless humans. Thank you.
Dr. Harari, we thank you for that brilliant overview of the situation and those thought-provoking questions which you've given part of the answer, and we will have sleepless nights thinking about them. Ladies and gentlemen, we now have the final musical interlude, and I want to invite our musicians, and they're going to play something which looks like a question mark, but a happy question mark. It's called Smiles.
אם עולה השמש ובכל בוקר חדשה היא, אם הפרחים סתם מחייכים אל העולם, אם מתגלגל הגל מצחוק עד השמיים, אז למה גם אנחנו לא נצחק עם כולם? אם יש עוד קרקסים וליצנים ולא בספר, אם צחוק הילדים נשמע צלול ולא רחוק, צוחק השוק הים הפעמון של בית הספר, אז למה גם אנחנו לא נלמד לצחוק? כדאי ללמוד מן הפרחים, לא לקמץ בחיוכים, והעולם תראו יהיה פתאום כה טוב. כדאי לחלום ולקוות, נסו רק פעם, כדאי לצחוק, כדאי לחיות, כדאי לאהוב. כדאי גם לחייך, מותר לכעוס, אך בזהירות לא להרוס, אפשר לרקום חלום נפלא ביום סגריר. הכל יהיה טוב יותר ודאי, אבל בינתיים אפשר לבכות ללא סיבה, אפשר גם לשיר. אדם הולך בעיר, והיא שלו והיא זרה לו, והוא שותק והעולם כולו שותק. לפתע בדיוק מולו תינוקת התחייכה לו, והאדם צוחק והעולם כולו צוחק. ושוב נושקת שמש את העיר המאוהבת, גל שובב הקל נושק לסלע שוב ושוב, האור נושק לצל והפסים את הרכבת. רק אנו שוכחים מה שכל כך כל כך חשוב. כדאי ללמוד מן הפרחים, לא לקמץ בחיוכים, והעולם תראו יהיה פתאום כה טוב. כדאי לחלום ולקוות, נסו רק פעם, כדאי לצחוק, כדאי לחיות, כדאי לאהוב. כדאי גם לחייך, מותר לכעוס אך בזהירות לא להרוס, אפשר לרקום חלום נפלא ביום סגריר. הכל יהיה טוב יותר ודאי, אבל בינתיים אפשר לבכות ללא סיבה, אפשר גם לשיר. לה 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 לה. תודה רבה.
Thank you so much, Ola and Michelle, our brilliant musicians. We want to thank you. And that was an absolutely wonderful piece to end this ceremony on. Now, before we conclude, we have what we call the Jerusalem University, Hebrew University custom. I want to ask all our honorees today to please stand up as a group. And ladies and gentlemen, let's applaud and congratulate the class of Honorary Fellows for 2015. Again, congratulations to all the honorees, one by one, and as a group, a wonderful group of honorees for the class of 2015. And again, I want to thank our wonderful musicians for a wonderful performance of the three pieces. Ladies and gentlemen, this ends the ceremony for this year, and shalom, להתראות.